Welcome to the Note Nuggets podcast, where you can learn how to become the bank, build wealth, and accumulate streams of income perfect for your savings or IRAs. You'll hear from industry experts, seasoned veterans, and everyday investors. Our goal is to teach you how to invest in notes, one nugget of knowledge at a time. Here's your host, Kevin Galang.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Note Nuggets podcast, where you learn how to turn other people's debt into income for your savings or IRA. This week's episode is all about REOs. If you're unfamiliar with them, here's a quick rundown of what an REO is. REO stands for real estate owned, which actually means that a bank owns the property after foreclosing on a defaulted borrower. For a more refined definition of an REO, head over to notenuggets.com/REO. When buying an REO, you can finance the purchase with the bank that owns the property. In fact, in 2019, Wells Fargo stated that roughly 60% of their REO purchases were acquired with financing. Now you have a mortgage on a property you own and you've become a landlord. But there's another way. You can purchase an REO with cash. Then you'd own it outright, similarly to paying for an investment property with cash. But you didn't come to the Note Nuggets podcast to learn how to be a landlord. You came here to learn how to be a lender. And that's what our guest will talk about today, how you can create cash flow with an REO using your IRA. By owning the property outright, you aren't encumbered by a lender. You owe nobody. Therefore, you can get creative with the sale of your investment property. If you're an active investor, where can you get access to tens of thousands of dollars to buy an REO if you don't want to use the bank? Well, I'll tell you that there are literally millions of people with money just sitting in an IRA that are itching to get their money moving. I know because I was once this type of person in the exact same situation. I had money sitting in my IRA and it was just eroding away thanks to inflation and the small administration fees that the self-directed IRA custodian has. Then I got serious about my retirement account. I got some education and worked with the right people that I was comfortable with so that I could structure secured loans within my self-directed IRA. Now my notes are generating cash flow that's protected by assets. The deals I structured are so strong that while I don't want my borrowers to fail, I know that I'm protected by the assets we use to collateralize my notes. Look, if you're serious about growing your IRA and getting your money moving through mortgages, send me an email at kevin@notenuggets.com. Also, if you like what you hear from the Note Nuggets podcast, don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts so that we can reach more like-minded people just like you. Now, let's learn about our guest before we dive into how you can create cash flow with REOs in your IRA. Dave Franecki has over 30 years of experience in real estate, focused primarily on 3 distinct geographic locations: Cincinnati, Ohio, Portland, Maine, and Phoenix, Arizona. He has experience as a realtor, a real estate broker, a landlord, rehabber, loan officer, and note investor. Dave enjoys teaching and coaching individuals how to build and implement their investment strategies through buying, selling, and creating mortgage notes. So how can a note investor today incorporate REOs into their strategy?
Well, a note investor can buy a property just like he can off the trustee sale or out of the MLS, and then sell it with seller carry, seller financing. In other words, be a deal architect. So advertise for buyer in the penalty box, and now with the changing underwriting criteria of loans, their FICOs are getting higher, the amount down is getting greater. There's a lot of people that are qualified. They might have had a blip with this last go around over the last few months, but they're really strong buyers and they have a good down payment. So therefore, as a note investor, you can buy the property and then sell it seller financing, get really, really creative with that paper. And if you structure that in such a way, you could sell a partial off the first, or you could, let's go back for a minute. You could create 2 notes. You could sell a partial on the first and keep the second paying to you. There's a lot of different variables there where you can be creative, which is where you got to be in today's market.
So when you talk about creating 2 notes, let's say, so first of all, the REO, you have to buy that with cash, right? You couldn't go to the bank and finance it, or how does that work?
You could probably find an investor partner. I doubt, in terms of the REO, they probably aren't going to sit around to, if you're buying it from the bank as an REO, yeah, you could probably finance that out. But why go to a bank? Why do you want to set yourself up for failure? They change their rules and regulations all the time. Find private money. It's out there. Make it work.
Yes, I agree.
Be creative. I mean, in the last crash, Kevin, the folks that had a lot of rental property with the banks lost them because they lost their tenants too. And the banks would not negotiate. Those folks that had properties financed by private investors were able to negotiate through and come out whole. There's some friends of mine in South Bend, and I'm going to do some coaching with them. They're flippers, and I've known them for 5 years or so. And they were talking about, well, we want to get these properties and get them as a rental and refinance them. I said, no, don't use banks. Use private money. It's out there. Use the IRA money that's out there. Don't go to the banks. Don't get stuck in that quagmire.
Yeah, there's I read a report, this is maybe in 2018, that there was trillions of dollars in IRA that's sitting there. And I would argue a vast majority of people don't know exactly what they should do with their IRA. So sometimes it's just sitting there, or they're settling, not knowing what else is out there. So I agree with you. I think private money is a fantastic way to go.
Right, it's totally the way to go. You know, it's from on my side. So I do well, now it's virtual, but I was doing a Note Investors Forum meetup, here in Phoenix, and I've been doing that for 5 years. And the purpose was to develop these relationships. And I could probably get $2-3 million now, but I can't spend it because I can't find the good notes that I feel will be there in 6 months, meaning performing. So I'm just gathering money now and waiting. But again, it's private money. So there are ways to do that. You just have to be, I guess, open-minded. Like with Quest IRA, they have mixers, as they did before the COVID thing. You need to get involved with these different groups, the different REIAs, and just look and basically put your hand up and say, I'm looking, and develop a relationship. It's all about the know, like, and trust.
Yes, that's a key point, especially when it comes to raising capital, the relationship, even from an SEC guideline. And I'm not an attorney, but I've been told this by attorneys that you can't just outright and say, hey, give me your money, right? You can't do that, but you have to build that relationship to where somebody's comfortable with you.
And that's not the purpose of this call, but let's just say there's some folks that are going to be wearing stripes because with the JVs that went bad. So you have to be careful about how you set things up. The term JV is probably not in vogue anymore, even though some people do use it. Probably a loan or loan participation agreement is a better way of addressing things. And again, that's another topic for another day without going into the details on this call.
If you've got money sitting in your IRA and you don't want it to erode thanks to inflation and fees, start buying assets. An REO is a great way to get that money moving. Once you own it, you can create a new note and collect that mailbox money that's perfect for your IRA. To learn more from Dave, head over to notenuggets.com/REO-cashflow.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Note Nuggets podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get access to additional weekly value nuggets and get notified with episode updates. To subscribe, all you have to do is head over to subscribe.notenuggets.com. If you have any questions about this episode or note investing, book a time on Kevin's calendar at contact.notenuggets.com. We'll see you next week with another note nugget to add to your tool belt.